afternoon. I just checked. I'm sorry I couldn't join you earlier on. I was called by the Chief Justice, Judge Mocheng, who was doing and reporting to the public of South Africa, what the judiciary has been doing for the past financial year. And I've been working closely with our courts in the past few months to try and fix the courts. Some of them are in a terrible state. Facility management has not been doing their work that well, so I hope you accept my apology. I would like to greet the President of the South African Black Technical and Allied Careers Organization, Clint Koopman, that I've just met. Also the Presidents of the South African Women in Construction, the South African Institute of Black Property Professionals, and the Black Business Council in the built environment. The various CEOs that are here from the private companies. It's a great pleasure for me to spend some time with you today and discuss the topic of ethical leadership towards a transformed and a sustained built environment. I am 4 months into this position. I feel that feels like 4 years. But I was so encouraged also to hear that your organization is also prioritizing ethical leadership and transformation. The built environment is a very important industry in our country. But I want to speak for a moment on a very important issue that has been plaguing our beautiful country for too long. A few weeks ago, our country was angry, a nation was bleeding, and mostly women of South Africa took to the streets to say, enough is enough. I've just been informed about the petition that you signed this morning, or the pledges that you signed. Because I never want the call for action to fade away and we all forget about it until the next rape and the next murder of a woman. We need to have these messages going out 365 days a year. We need to be reminded about this every day. I don't want this thing to go quiet on the airwaves, on social media, websites and all of this. We need to speak about it every year, every day. Femicide, we have got a stained image internationally as being the country with the highest rate of femicide in the world. And I specifically thought of raising it also this morning because the built environment industry is very, very male dominated. But you also have an opportunity in that you hold high positions in your companies, in your offices, you go onto building sites all the time, and you can really be advocates on the construction site, in the built environment against gender-based violence. And hopefully this message will be carried over to the domestic lives. So I'm currently looking at a program to release buildings owned by the Department of Public Works for safe spaces. Because you find that women stay in these abusive relationships because they've got nowhere else to go. And there again, we are going to partner with the private sector to make those buildings and turn them into safe shelters for women. I'm also calling on the private sector to assist us. where we want to use all government-owned buildings and even your own private buildings to produce big billboards with anti-femicide messages, anti-gender-based violences, to put those billboards up all over our country. Those billboards must be in the faces of those monsters that are killing and raping our women. So I am consulting with the private sector to join hands with us to put those messages up all over the country. So that is our contribution from the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure to deal with gender-based violence. And if I can turn to the topic of today, and that is that, first let me say, it's very important that we continue to engage. I don't like this once-off conferences where you go and talk and there's no follow-work afterwards, there is no action afterwards. So I would really like us to continue with tackling the key issues of transformation, of ethical leadership, even after your conference today. But let me start with procurement and the issue of preferential procurement. Currently in DPWI, we are following the preferential procurement regulations of 2017. And those regulations set a pre-qualification criteria for all tenders and for all quotations. Now, if you look at that 2017 regulations, I think it's about 24 pages. I just looked at it again yesterday. And I am informed there is an attempt by government to make the procurement processes easier or better. And I certainly also think that there is room for improvement here. So, additionally also, there is the 30% mandatory subcontracting regulation for contracts above 30 million. And we are implementing this to make sure that designated groups are able to get work. Also, in promoting the growth of small and medium enterprises, the DPWI sources our quotations from the National Treasury Central Supplier Database. That is what we use also in DPWI. So all quotations awarded by the department are now designated only for level 1 and level 2 BBBEE accredited service providers. Similar pre-qualification criteria is applicable for tenders on the value thresholds. So in pursuit and support of the empowerment and transformation agenda of government, the DPWI has set an empowerment target that stipulates that 80% of all bids awarded must be awarded to designated groups as listed in the preferential procurement regulations of 2017. A second target stipulates that 80% of procurement spent must also be to designated groups in other departments. Now, I'll speak to the issue of ethical leadership and corruption later on. The only threat to achieving these targets is ethical leadership, where you don't have ethical leadership, and corruption. Those are the threats to the kind of targets that we would like to reach. Now, as a department, we also seek to promote and advance women, people with disabilities, and youth by using and leveraging the procurement procedures. Women have an important role to play in the sector. And I want to also take this moment to commend the South African women in construction for the work that they are doing to make sure more women have a say and a seat at the table of this industry. In terms of the role of the built environment professions to achieve transformation in the built environment, I can share with you specific efforts for transformation with a specific focus on women and youth representation. As you all know, we have to produce a 5-year plan for the next 5 years, the medium strategic framework, and we have to put in 5-year targets. So I'll share with you the 5-year targets and then our annual targets. So with regard to our medium strategic framework, the department aims to leverage on the extent of its leasing and letting property portfolio to promote the transformation of the built environment through the following 5 targets for the 5 years to come. 1, to support the entrance of new built environment professionals into the sector. The department commits to 25% of procurement of new lease accommodations will be sourced from women. 40% of procurement of all new lease accommodation will be sourced from historically disadvantaged individuals. The department is also committed to annual targets, and our annual performance targets to ensure that transformation of the built environment is monitored and prioritized through every financial year for the next 5 years. So our annual target for the next financial year, we would like to see 150 state-owned properties must be let out for economic transformation purposes to SMMEs. 5 state-owned properties to be let out for student accommodation and social housing. 100 contracts to be awarded to previously disadvantaged groups and new entrants to leasing out of accommodation. We'd like to see annually that 5 localized service centers acquired using, amongst others, the build, operate and transfer method, and the lease to own method as property development strategies. And we think that this will open the market for various built environment property professionals, including construction, engineering, quantity surveying, town planning, property management, facility management. We think that so many of these professionals can benefit by that. In terms of skills development and mentorship for graduates and those seeking in-service training, as part of the department's annual performance plan, again our annual plan, our real estate management services branch has committed to training 100 people through leasing in and letting out of state-owned properties. We are the custodians of close to 98,000 state-owned properties, about 29,000 pieces of land. DPWI is just a custodian on behalf of the public of this country. And therefore, the land and the buildings must be used for the public good. That must be our first priority. And through putting it out for public good first, you're then able to lead the transformation process, but also direct and make sure that it does happen. So, on the issue of ethical leadership, the built environment is a key area that, like I've said, that we as government can prioritize to advance transformation in a country that is still dealing with the legacy of the old apartheid policies. And as you know, transformation is a key priority, not only for DPWI, but for the entire government. So I just speak on behalf of DPW, and I can inform you what is our targets. And I'm doing it deliberately, because you must also monitor. You must hold us to account. You shouldn't allow any public official to come and tell you any story and then thereafter you just believe it. You have to monitor us. You have to hold us accountable for the utterance of what we are saying. And that's what I'm saying. Further engagements need to continue for you to be able to hold us accountable. Now, as we welcome, all of us, we welcome an advanced transformation. But transformation should be done in an ethical way. Not transformation for the sake of transformation through corruption. We need to do transformation through the ethical way, so that collectively we can strengthen ethical leadership and practices and put in place new building blocks that will institutionalize ethical leadership to ensure that leaders will not only talk the talk, but they will walk the talk. Corruption is sponsored by the private sector mostly. And this must stop. Yes, there's a lot of corruption in the public sector, but there's equally a lot of corruption in the private sector. You need two to tango. So as much as we as government are trying to put systems in place now in public works, we're putting systems in place that can protect and that can prevent corruption. Because we always speak after the event. Ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, corruption steals from the poor. With all the money that gets stolen in this country on an annual basis, we could have done a lot of development, especially for the poor and the most vulnerable in our country. So yes, we will admit there's a lot of corruption in government. I think public works has got the worst reputation in government. And I am very, very determined to root it out. To root corruption out in public works. Because there are many unemployed graduates. There are many companies with the necessary credentials and the skills to do work for the private sector or for the public sector. And it's not fair that companies and ethical leaders in the built environment are not getting a scope or a job or in procurement in public works. But the ones who don't even have the skill, they don't have the skill, they mess up our facility management, they can't do any job properly. Those people are coining the money. And you, the professionals with the skills, you are not getting the jobs because it goes via corruption to the ones who don't have the skill. And I don't think that's fair. So, we all have to do a lot more to fight corruption. Corruption has become the norm in our country rather than the exception. I think we all need to hang our heads in shame. In GPW, I keep on forgetting the I. We have got over 3,000 employees in the department of GPWI doing business with the department. So we're trading with ourselves. We've got over 300 people working in the department who have got their own companies. So I think you have to give me a few months. We're getting there. I'm working for the SIU. We've got the Hawks on board. In the next 3 weeks, I'm going to go to Parliament to give them an update of all the investigations, where they are. There are a number of civil litigation pending with the asset forfeiture unit. There are about 403 million that they must go and get back for the department. There are a number of criminal litigation outstanding, and I will be giving an update every 3 months about where we are in terms of rooting out corruption. But we also have now introduced in the department that has never been there before: contract management and consequence management. You see, if there's no consequences, people will continue to do what they're doing because they know there's no consequence. We're going to do contract management, because when we sign a contract with any of you in the private sector, the conditions must be clearly understood by both. There mustn't be something in the fine print where they can crook you later on. And so, I want to ask all of you as professionals that if you are asked by any official of public works for any bribe, for that official to do his or her work, don't do it. You can contact me, I won't charge you. I won't charge you. I know there are a number of companies with leases. When they want to have their leases renewed, the official will say, yes, I know your lease is coming up, but first something for me. And if you don't give the something, you can wait for the lease. But you know what is the impact of not renewing the lease? We can get an audit query from the Auditor General, because we are not allowed to have people in our buildings without an authentic, genuine contract. And that's why we can't get clean audits, because the Auditor General pick up all of these things. So please, I won't charge you. I'll give you my phone number, you can call me. Any one of them ask you to pay them anything, you don't do it. I want to speak a little bit about the expanded public works program that's also under the Department of Public Works. And as you know, through the wages that people earn in these programs, It helps with poverty alleviation, but they're also helping in many key projects like building early childhood development centers. Some of them do home-based community care. And in the infrastructure sector, the EPWP program makes an important contribution to transformation in the built environment. I'm sure some of you know about the programs that we run, which is the Fukupile Contractor Development Program. There are some problems there. I know somebody's also tried to just do it with certain companies, but we're sorting that out. We also have the program, the National Youth Service Program, and I'm happy to announce that we have just received an international award from the Future Council's Future Policies, supported by the International Labour Organization, for our youth development programs. Because these programs draw young people into skills development, both at a theoretical level and a practical level, and then also preparing them for opportunities to participate in the built environment. And we've seen that we've trained young learners in skills such as bricklaying and electrician. So this program is also available if you want to see how to access it, how to apply, how it can be used in the built environment space. Lastly, I want to speak briefly about also your commitment as professionals to the department. What I find very problematic is that sometimes we don't get our work completed in time, on time, and in budget. We had a lot of times, now I'm not blaming the private sector, but there is a problem. If we get 20 million rand from the Department of Education to build a school, and we must deliver the school in 2 years, you find 3.5 years later, the school is not finished, and we are now have to pay 100 million rand. That must also stop. You also find that when government buys things, there's a lot of inflated prices. You can try and get rich quickly by milking the very taxpayer that you are paying tax to. But it's ridiculous. If you buy that glass in a shop, you pay 2 rand for it. If government want to buy it, it costs 25 to 50 rand. It's ridiculous. People are milking government. And you know what? We don't have resources in this country anymore. Most of it being stolen, and some of the crooked ones still want to milk government further. We have to be more reasonable when providing a service for government. We can't, as government, pay 10 times more what the normal price is. I know from the side of government, which we've also now corrected in the Department of Public Works, is that we are supposed to pay suppliers within 30 days. I want to apologize that it has not happened in DPW for a long time. Because even when people have to pay your invoice, they first want something for them before you pay your invoice. But we sorted it out now. We have cleared the system on a weekly basis. I put out a report of how many invoices are outstanding, and we're really trying our best so that all of you could be paid on time, those of you who are doing business with the DPWI. I'm really calling on all of us as good South Africans to come together. Because like the saying goes, that if good people do nothing, that's when the bad things triumph in our country. Our country is in a very difficult space at the moment. We're at a crossroads. We're on a cliff. There's a lot of anxiety in our country at the moment. And government has been very honest about the state of our economy. And I think the private sector also needs to be honest as well. Because as much as there is a profit motive in the private sector, we also need to know what conditions need to prevail in our country to deal with the trust deficit between government and the private sector. I think from both sides we need to do a lot more work to deal with the trust deficit. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if we are going to sink, if this ship is going to sink, we are all going to sink together. So let us really collaborate with each other, let us take hands. Let us take hands to tackle corruption. Let us take hands to stimulate economic growth. Let us take hands to deal with the gender-based violence. And let us talk about implementation. Kaules. The patience of our people is running out. We can't let them wait any longer. And really, colleagues, government cannot do it alone. We need experts, skilled people like yourselves, who are leaders in your own right, in your own industry, in the built environment. We need to all work together to take our country to greater heights. I'm a very optimistic person. We must never give up hope. I think that we've been through worse in our country. And as a collective, as a people, we've always been able to get out of the depth. I want to thank SABTACO for inviting us here today to attend this gathering. And I want to end up by saying, let us think with humility. Let us move on with passion and work with the intent to make sure that the built environment can reach its full potential. Let us work together to grow the economy and to create the much needed jobs in our country. It is the role of the public sector of government to create the conditions conducive for the private sector to create jobs. It is the duty of government to invest in infrastructure. And this is why infrastructure has been added to the Department of Public Works. And there's a fund that's in the process of being established, where from the public sector, government has put in over 100 billion rand. It's going to be a blended fund where the private sector will also put money in there for infrastructure. But infrastructure can be, in the built environment, can be a catalyst for economic growth. Because you will then have, if government invests that money in infrastructure, you will then have a crowding in effect by the private sector that can create their jobs. And in the next few months, those are the plans that we are working on. The department was only announced, the infrastructure department was only announced in May. It was officially gazetted on the 23rd of August. that is now the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. That the PICC, the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Unit, has also been transferred to the Department of Public Works. And also the Infrastructure Delivery Management System from National Treasury is also being transferred. So it's all work in progress in setting up this department that will now be guiding infrastructure on behalf of government. And so I can only say watch the space. We will keep you informed as we are making progress. We have to, before the end of this year, have this whole department up and running. We will certainly be looking for the necessary skills in the built environment, because the built environment is our main mandate, now also followed by infrastructure. So ladies and gentlemen, there's still a lot of work to be done. But let me thank you for your contribution in your professional space, Mr. President, what this organization is doing. And also want to thank the women in construction for the work that they are doing. I'm here to reach out today and to say, let's find that way of working together. So thank you for the opportunity and God bless.